So I tend to follow the lectionary. And as I have started here, I have been filling in this calendar that the UCC gives the pastors and other leaders. And one of the things that I noticed that usually I don't pay a lot of attention to is suggested themes. And this time, the theme for this Sunday popped out at me, and it is holy language. And which I thought was an interesting theme for the beginning of a ministry. So as I'm here as transitional minister, because as transitional minister, there are so many opportunities. And anytime there is a change, there's some fear, but also opportunities. But there are so many opportunities for miscommunications and misunderstandings. And so I thought, isn't it interesting that the theme suggested here for my first week is holy language? So my sermon will be on keeping our language holy. And I want to start, though, with this passage with Thomas, because I've always had a sense that in some way, in many ways, Thomas gets a bad rap. Because how do we almost always refer to Thomas as the doubter? You know, not Didymus or the twin or many of the other options that we have for Thomas. We go to that failure and highlight that, and we've been highlighting it for 2,000 years. The poor man. I would hate for one moment of my life to be held against me for a couple thousand years. And it's not like Thomas was the only one who doubted. When we have this foot race on Easter morning, and as the two disciples are running to the grave, we saw that they saw and then they believed. Which means they doubted up to that point. They had to see it with their own eyes before they believed. So poor Thomas, the doubter. For me, doubt, if we stay in doubt, that's not a good place to be. But so often, doubt is that moment of potential growth. As I mentioned in the adult Sunday school this morning about there's a difference between having a childlike faith, that openness to what the world presents us, and a childish faith. And I think that if we don't go through that process of wrestling with our faith, the way that Jacob wrestled with the angel, if we don't go through that wrestling, we don't grow. And we end up with a childish faith. And a childish faith is often a self-righteous faith. I've got all the answers because I haven't really paid attention and thought with it. But sometimes that moment of doubt opens up such deeper understandings. So I think Thomas got a bad rap. And I think doubt has its place as long as we don't stay there. As long as we are mature enough to look at our doubt and then turn to Scripture, turn to our community, and struggle the way that Jacob did. We may walk away with a limp, but boy, we usually come away with a blessing when we do that. So the holy language business. Because I'm looking at these passages that were in the lectionary and I'm thinking, where is the holy language bit for this suggested theme? And I see three interesting elements, and that is when Jesus arrives, he starts with peace. Peace be with you. How rare do we start with peace in our interactions with one another? There are so many things that we face in this world So many doubts that we have, so much confusion, so much anger and frustration, so much disillusionment, that I think so often we lead with that anger and frustration, irritation. What if we lead with peace, with joy, with hope and kindness? I think we end up with settling into these holy moments and enrich our relationships. So I think that this is holy language when Jesus shows up, because I think that if someone that I loved, that I had followed, that I had left my old life behind to join, and that person had died, and I had gone through the pain of Good Friday and the pain of Holy Saturday, and now all of a sudden this person is in front of me, I would be shrieking all sorts of moments of terror. I would be overly excitable. And yet there's this moment of peace. I know you're afraid, but peace be with you. And that's holy language. And then there's that moment of where he talks of forgiveness. Anything that you forgive will be forgiven, and anything that you don't forgive won't be forgiven. And this I struggled with growing up, because the idea that these disciples had the power to prevent forgiveness, to prevent God's forgiveness, was a problem for me. It's like nothing can get in the way of God's forgiveness, but here Jesus is saying if you don't forgive it, it won't be forgiven. And then I thought, what if we turn it around? And what if Jesus is talking to them and what they carry inside of them? Because think about the pain, the anger, the frustration, all of the emotions that we carry within us until we're able to release that. To release that to God, to release that to the universe. If I have something that is weighing on me, an old anger, an old hurt, if I don't forgive it, it's not going to be forgiven, and I'm going to carry that pain. The way that poor Thomas has had to carry that terrible doubter language for 2,000 years. How do we feel when we're finally able to forgive? Isn't there something holy there? Something sacred there? Earlier, Rich was talking about, that moment where he was able to step forward and live, more, broadly because of pain and hardship. Forgiving, letting go, is this moment of being able to live a life that is more full. That, where God is able to enter us more richly. Letting go of the pain, the old betrayals, the old hurts. And so often in our communities, I think we're divided because of old hurts. Because don't we know of families that have left the church or left the community because of a fight so far back in history we can't even remember what started it? Can we find the language and the forgiveness and the hope to heal so that we can move forward as individuals and as communities? So I think this if you forgive, it is forgiven. Move on in new life that is opened up because of your ability to forgive. And recognize that if you're not able to forgive, you're going to be stuck in that pain and anxiety or frustration or anger. But then I want to go back to Thomas. Because Thomas does doubt, and it's better if we are able to hear and believe, to not have to have the hard evidence laid in front of us. But I think that there is something holy about what Thomas did. And that is, Thomas looked within himself and knew what he needed to move forward. You are telling me something that is unbelievable. I am still in this moment of grief and pain because this man that I offered to lay my life down for is gone. And now you're telling me he's back? It's too soon. Because haven't all of us had a loved one die and there be things that it's just too soon? When my grandmother died, there's grandma's chair. She died in early August, and Christmas Eve night, no one had sat in grandma's chair. It was too soon. That's grandma's chair. And we had 20 people over, and there's grandma's chair, and it was standing room only. And finally I said, we've got to be able to sit down in her chair. We can't have this holy chair sitting there forever unused when we have people who need to sit. But it was too soon in August and September. December was hard, but we now sit in grandma's chair. So Thomas, I think, is in this moment of too soon. It is too soon for me to have hope. And I need this for me to move forward. I need to see for myself. And I need to touch those wounds. I need to have something tangible to build my hope upon. And God showed up and gave it to him. I think that's holy. And I think it's holy language that he was able to say what he needed. How rare is it for us to say what we need? To be honest with ourselves. I had a parishioner that was angry because no one came to visit her in the hospital. I didn't know she was in the hospital. And so I asked, I said, who did you tell that you were in the hospital? Well, no one. How can we come and fulfill your need of a visit if you won't tell us that you're even in the hospital? We don't like speaking our needs. But boy, don't we have deeper relationships and better growth when we're able to do it. And God shows up. So are we able, as a group, to share our needs, to share our frustrations, to hear our call and be willing to speak it? Can we heal? Because healing is sometimes hard. A lot of times it's easier to hold on to that anger and frustration and resentment and all the rest than to risk saying what we need in holy love and accept the healing that God has to give us. And as a church, we are Christ's representatives. Are we able to speak our needs and then to step up for mutual healing and mutual growth? Can we be the church? Can we be that holy language speaking, extravagant welcoming, and deep loving community that this world needs? Can we go all in? Because isn't that the phrase of St. Martin's? We're going all in. Can we do that in Christ's love? You don't know me, And I hope that we get to know one another very well over the next period of time. I am strange. I'm the peculiar one of the family. So, as I mentioned, this is a time of beautiful opportunities, but also an opportunity for misunderstandings and miscommunications. If you have a question, ask. If you have a concern, share it. If you have exciting hopes, speak those. Because if we don't speak face to face in Christ's love, we stagnate, or boy, we backslide. And I pray that we're not doing those, that we are part of this community in rich, vibrant ways, and that we are able to love one another and be known by our love. And pay attention. My call for this week and moving forward is pay attention to the language that you use and the language that you hear. And that includes the language that we speak to ourselves. Because I will speak to myself in ways that are ways I'd never speak to another person. And I think most of us do. I'm not sure where these voices come from. Bad experience with a teacher or, whatever. But pay attention to your self-talk, because your self-talk becomes a reality. Remember that you are God's beloved child. And I hope you speak to yourself as a beloved child. Look on your Facebook or whatever social media or texting. Go back and look at the last week. Am I speaking holy language of love and hope and connection and relationship? Or am I falling short of that? Go back and look at 1 Corinthians 13, and this is how I'll end the service, because I've talked too long already. I tend to do that. I'll try to do better. But let's look at 1 Corinthians 13. And we almost always hear this at weddings. But think about every relationship that you are in, including your relationship to God and your relationship to yourself. Can you be in relationship in love? If I speak in the tongues of humans and of angels, but do not have love, I am a noisy gong or a clanging cymbal. And if I have prophetic powers and understand all mysteries and all knowledge, and if I have all faith so as to remove mountains, but do not have love, I am nothing. If I give away all my possessions, and if I hand over my body so that I may boast, but do not have love, I gain nothing. And here it is. Love is patient. Love is kind. Love is not envious or boastful or arrogant or rude. It does not insist on its own way. It is not irritable. It keeps no record of wrongs. It does not rejoice in wrongdoing, but rejoices in truth. It bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things. Love never ends. But as for prophecies, they will come to an end. And as for tongues, they will cease. As for knowledge, it will come to an end. For we know only in part, and we prophesy only in part. But when the complete comes, the partial will come to an end. When I was a child, I spoke like a child, I thought like a child, I reasoned like a child. When I became an adult, I put an end to my childish ways. For now we see only a reflection as in a mirror, but then we shall see face to face. Now I know only in part, then I will know fully, even as I have been fully known. And now faith, hope, and love remain, these three, and the greatest of these is love. May we have holy language and speak in holy love.